is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
Montreal Expos hat, and he is ready to go. How you feeling today?
I'm good. No complaints.
No?
No.
All right.
No.
What'd you think about the Emmanuel Ogbah stuff coming on and what's it called? The agent coming out saying he is not going to get tagged. So how do you read into it and / what have you heard?
Well, I don't like it. Now, is it posturing, trying to put public opinion pressure on the Dolphins? Don't know. Probably not. I don't get it. I honestly don't get it. I mean, the dude's going to get paid in free agency, and if you're letting him walk, then you create a massive hole on the defensive line that you're going to have to address. And at 29, are you going to get anybody who's going to come in and have the kind of immediate impact that Ogbah had the last 2 years? No. Then you're going to go out and get a free agent where you're going to have to pay a lot for? No. I mean, or maybe, but then what's the point? You know what you have in Ogbah. The guy's been really, really good by all accounts. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
I just said, I don't get it. I honestly don't get it why this guy wasn't the priority. Now, of course, if Drew's making outrageous contract demands, you can't just give the guy whatever he wants. But I think this is a guy who should have been prioritized, and this is what happens when, and maybe instead of extending Jerome Baker and Jason Sanders last year, and I like Baker, I think he's a very good player. I don't think he's nearly as much of an impact player on this defense as Ogbah is.
Amen.
And then Jason Sanders extending a kicker before a defensive end who was coming off a really good year. Certainly,
that was questioned. I wouldn't have paid Ogbah last year either. Not after 1 year. I needed to see it again. Now's when you pay him. But let me run this by you, because obviously we've been doing this for a long time. Mm-hmm. I kind of get the feeling that Drew got some positive feedback about Ogbah for free agency, and he probably gave the Dolphins a really high number. And that's probably where, and if there's one thing that, I talked about this in the first hour with Chris. Chris hasn't been really the guy that is like bending over backwards immediately to give people money and extensions and picks and all. It needs to be negotiated normally. You know what I mean? It's kind of one of those things that he's been very patient in all of his kind of dealings. So I guess we shouldn't be surprised that he's also doing it again this way too, right?
Yeah. And then also Chris kind of told us when he met with 11 of us South Florida writers in Indy in a little media session that kind of suggested they'd had negotiations throughout the season. So to me, no, I'm with you. I wouldn't have extended him necessarily last off season, but once, let's say, through the halfway point of the season, I would tell you, like, even though his sack numbers really picked up in the second half of the season, he was still a factor in terms of applying pressure in the first half of the season, to the point where it's like, okay, well, this guy's not a fluke. And let's remember, this guy's a former second-round pick and at the very top of the second round. So this was it's not a guy who came in and suddenly out of the blue, oh, look at this, he can play. So there was always something there, and the Dolphins unlocked it. So I think by the middle of last year, this is where, to me, the push should have been made. And based on, again, what Chris Greer told us in Indy, they did start having conversations during the season. Nothing materialized. And now we find ourselves at this particular spot. And the point you make is a very good one, that Drew is realizing, there's going to be a very healthy market for Ogbah services in free agency. So there's no point in, taking a discount or taking less than he might actually get. So this is going to be a tricky one, but to me,
and remember, we also have to look at this. These 2 years took away a window of him possibly getting 2 contracts. So he's at a point now where this is his only big contract that he's going to sign, because he had his second round contract that he lived through, and then he signed a deal here that it was like $7 million per season, which was very cheap. Bargain. So he didn't make a ton of money here, and so this is his only shot at a big deal. So he might be willing to sign anywhere that's willing to give him the most amount of money, and he won't care about where he's signing, where some guys that are already coming off big deals or may have another big deal down the line may kind of say, I like this one better than the other place, and I know I'm going to make a little less money, but I like this area better. So this is kind of a catch-22 here. And here's the flip side to all of this. This is considered a pretty good draft for defensive ends, actually.
It is.
And there are some guys in free agency. So the question is, what plans do they have? And that's kind of what I talked about in the first hour, Alan, that if they're doing this also, they must also have a plan themselves of how they're going to replace him if they can't re-sign him at their number.
No question. And here's another point that we need to make about Agba is some players, really want to stay with the Dolphins because they have some sort of attachment. And a lot of times it's either whether they're from the area or this has been their team. Well, this is Agba's third team. He was drafted by Cleveland, then was traded to KC, then signed with the Dolphins. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe he's from Texas, maybe. So it's not like he's got some sort of sentimental attachment to the Dolphins. He wants to get paid. He wants his money. And who's to blame him? Because he was injured in KC his last year there, so he had to take like a cheaper deal with the Dolphins, who got him like I said, bargain. Talk about a bargain. 2 years, $15 million. With the production they got from him. So can't blame the dude. And without question, I don't think it would be stupid to think that the Dolphins, put all their stock in, we're going to re-sign Agba, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my Lord, what are we going to do now? He's not coming back. Obviously they have thought about this possibility. But to me, they'll replace him if he leaves. Except I know what the Dolphins have in Agba, and I like what the Dolphins have in Agba. To me, like I said, he's been easily the second best defensive player on this team the last 2 years behind X.
All right. So I'm sure you've done your homework. If Agba's not back, are there any free agents out there that you might find interesting that they could replace? Is there an underperforming free agent out there that they might be targeting like they did with Agba? I also thought about this because obviously my cynical mind works this way. But, Chris Greer and let's say David Cantor, they're kind of sitting down and talking. And they're trying to read. Obviously, it looks like something's going on with the X deal, right? Something looks like there's, right? So there's a little talk going on there, right? Maybe he also says, hey, I hear DeMarcus Lawrence is going to get cut. Isn't that your guy too, Mr. Cantor? So, things like that happen. So I'm just wondering, anybody out there any names that you might be throwing at us that you might say, well, if Agba doesn't come back, who else is out there?
Yeah. No, actually you got me because I was full combine mode last week.
Understandable.
I got back late Saturday night. Yesterday was a chill day. So come back to me with this one on Thursday and I'll do some research use of all
right, Mr. Combine guy. Any defensive ends that you think the Dolphins could target in the first couple of rounds?
Kayvon Thibodeau. No, he's not going to be there. I'm joking.
No shot.
Yeah. How's that, right?
No shot. Unless we could get Cristobal to bury some, nail him with some kind of a fake drug test or some fake.
There you go.
And then a la Marino, he drops to 29. That kind of stuff, We got a tackle that had a bong mask, dropped to 13,
You remember him well.
Think about that, man. We've had a couple of things that have happened to a couple players, and we kept one. The other one, unfortunately, we traded, but, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
At least we kept one. Do we have any other ones like that? Did anybody else have a rumor or an actual thing happen to them, and then we ended up getting him later outside of Marino and Tunsil. I don't know if I remember anybody else.
Man, that's a good question. Man, yeah. Catching me on a bad day. My man is Friday. No, the top guys are all going to be gone. That's the thing, is a lot of guys like, you know, the Johnson from Florida State's a hell of a player, but he's going to be gone. Thibodeau, very obviously. Hutchinson, very obviously. God bless it. No, my mind is fried. I'm kind of semi-useless right now. Trying to think here.
Well, for Thursday, you better be ready for some.
If the Dolphins don't wind up tagging or re-signing Agba, I will be prepared and I will have done my research, because then it becomes obviously very significant. I've been kind of waiting until tag day, which also is a day where
I want to hear about Drake Jackson and Cameron Thomas and, you know, guys that are going to go in the latter part of the first round, early second round, guys like that. I want to hear about some of these cats and what you think about some of those guys later on in the draft. Logan Hall from Houston. Although I think size might be an issue with him, but some of those guys, there's some, because this is supposedly a pretty deep defensive end draft. Like, there's supposed to be guys that are going to drop even into the second round and third rounds that you might be able to get a guy that might be a nice little project.
Yeah, all the way around. It's supposed to. It's one of those drafts again where it's kind of lacking in like high end, maybe high end players, but like it's very deep into the second and third round, which is good for the Dolphins since they're at 29 instead of picking 5th or 6th, which is where they were the last 2 years.
So, well, let's see. We will find out on the defensive side. All right, how aggressive do you expect them to be in free agency? Because this is not a rebuild. This is a retool of the offense. So how aggressive will they be to fix the side of Mike McDaniel's expertise?
I think they will be aggressive. I'm not sure they're going to go for like the monster guys like they did last year. Like they avoided, like, if you looked at the wide receivers last year, was Kenny Galladay was one of the big names. And there was another big name who escapes me. Like I said, I must be still in combine mode, like in Indy time or whatever. But Kenny Galladay was one of those guys where everybody was going, the Dolphins got to get him. He's a wide receiver they need. And they wound up going a different route, which obviously didn't pan out with Will Fuller. But I would expect more like – I would expect them to be aggressive in free agency because they have all this cap space. They do have to take care of issues in-house.
Amari Cooper, if he's released.
I wrote that absolutely somebody the Dolphins need to consider. There are 4 veterans who are either going to be released or traded, and it's Amari Cooper, Cole Beasley, Calvin Ridley, and Jarvis Landry. And there's some merit to all 4 of those.
Ridley's going to be released
or traded? No, traded.
Oh, okay. No, I would never do that. Okay,
oh, correct. Yeah, but what was I going to say? No,
you're like me, right?
Sorry,
you don't trade for a receiver, right?
No, I don't. There's too many out there. There's too many available out there. I think that's a bad use of draft capital. But with Amari Cooper and with all those guys, if they get on the market, obviously comes down to like Amari Cooper, and because I wrote that the Dolphins absolutely should consider him. There are like connections all over the place beyond the fact that he played at Miami Northwestern High. And then somebody replies to me, "Well, not at $20 million." Well, duh, no, but he's not getting $20 million if the Cowboys release him because they don't want to pay him $20 million. So it depends. Again, it's the same thing with Agba. It's great to want all these players, and it's a good idea to want to bring in all those kinds of players at the right price. What's that right price for Amari Cooper? That's a good question. They paid Will Fuller $10 million last year for 1 year, didn't pan out. What's the right price? $14 million. And then I had somebody, by the way, let's destroy the notion that he's injury prone. The guy's missed 5 games in 7 NFL seasons.
Who's that? Who we talking about?
Amari Cooper. I've seen that online a couple of places.
No, he's had a couple of injuries, but he's not. He's
missed 5 games in 7 seasons. So
he's not Devontae Parker.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. So, but yeah. No, but let me tell you, he is such an exceptional route runner.
He is.
That I think when you have that kind of precision to your game, and when you have a precision type quarterback, I think it's a marriage made in heaven, because when you run that that 12-yard out or 15-yard out, and you run it every time perfectly, and you throw it every time perfectly, and that magic rolls over to the game. You know, it doesn't roll over with a Des Bryant or a Chad Johnson who's going to ad lib out there. Correct. And the quarterback has to hesitate a little bit and wait to see when the break is coming sometimes. But when you have guys like Amari Cooper, you know, those kind of cats that they're precision route runners and they know how to – that's a gift for a guy like Tua, I think, personally.
The dude gets open. I remember the game the Dolphins played against him in 2019.
He played.
He made X look bad on a couple of double moves, and X is a damn good corner. Even though in that 2019 season he didn't play particularly well until he went on IR, but he made him look bad in that third game of the season. Now there's some minor issues. He'll drop a pass here or there, but tell you what, he'll catch a lot of passes too, and he will get open. So,
I love
the right price.
Terrific player. Yeah, I'm with you there. Let me ask you something, because it is the reality of it, and so I'm wondering if there's any of this feel for it in the office, in the front office. Okay, so we're watching that. You know, X did not play well in the first half, and then played really well in the second half. Agba, you mentioned it earlier, his sacks didn't pick up to the second half. Mm-hmm. Is there any chance that sometimes the front office might also be looking that, hey, the second half, because you also fired your coach that went 7-1. And so we think about this, we start thinking, did they not put a lot of weight in the second half because they didn't play? They had the easy schedule in the second half. And in the first half was the hard schedule. And that's where this team struggled. And players, even your elite players individually, also struggled. Is there any chance that this front office, because it's kind of consistent, they didn't put a lot of weight on what happened in the second half of the season?
There could be some merit to that, except go by track record. I mean, both Agba and X played really well in 2020 also. And as I mentioned with Agba, he wasn't getting the sacks, but he was getting around.
He was there. He was there.
He's always like a step later, whatever. And he was the only one up front who was getting any.
We talked about it every week that I talked about it with you. I said I felt terrible for Agba because he's right there. You know what I mean? But again, it's kind of close but no cigar. It's one of those kind of deals. And the only reason I bring it up to you, it's because they also fired the coach. So it was like kind of like the stamp of like, you guys didn't impress us with 7-1. Why? Because this, and this. What you screwed us up in is the beginning of the season. Those are the games you had to win to put yourself over the top. And because we knew you had the easier schedule in the back half, you know, that kind of, I'm just wondering if they're, you know, measuring people by that first half more than the second half. That's all.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. And I don't think for a millisecond they fired the coach on
lots of other
performance or record. It's strictly like inner workings, relationship issues. So I think the fact that they started 1-7, I don't think that's what led to his dismissal. No, again, and X also, I would make the argument he had a couple of bad games. All his bad games pretty much were early in the year. I'm not sure. I mean, let's look at the opener, for example. Dolphins won that game because of X made that huge play. And he had a couple of bad games, but I don't know that he was bad the entire first half. He just became lights out in the second half of the season. So I'm not sure. I don't think that would be a major factor involved here. I think the issue with Agba, I think it's purely financial considerations that right now I'm going to guess Drew is asking for a whole lot more at this point than the Dolphins are willing to pay. And at some point, something's going to have to give. Either the Dolphins are going to have to bite the bullet and say, we can't afford to lose him, or maybe they tell Drew, listen, go see what he can get on the market, come back to us, and we'll see if we match it. That's left to play out.
What'd you think of also Gesicki getting no tag? Although he's headed not yet, but he's headed to his honeymoon and he's got the Dolphin hat on. So he's been listen, on his behalf, he's always been very pro Dolphins. So we have to give him that he's never, like, that's why I say there must be some movement on X, because we had some, stuff being thrown around last year. You know, he was even crushing his teammate. Like, you know, how are you paying him more than me? You know, that kind of stuff. He even threw Byron Jones under the bus in the process. None of that is going on with X. So that tells me there's some going on behind the scenes, some communication that has eased the concerns. Yeah. And then the same thing here with Gesicki. Now, Gesicki has not shown us to do any of those things that we saw from X the year before, but still he's been very pro-Dolphins. There's been no tag. How do you see this playing out?
I'm starting to think that the tea leaves are looking like 50-50. He just might wind up getting tagged.
Okay.
Now, is that tag and they keep him, tag, or they look to maybe trade him to see what they get? Not sure, but it's looking that way, and it's looking very well. Also, maybe that just as Mike McDaniel kind of like presented his plan to the Dolphin brass of how he's going to get the most out of Tua in his offense, it's very, very possible that he may have done the same thing with Mike Gesicki. In fact, it's likely he did the same thing with Mike Gesicki and goes, this is how I'm going to use him in this offense. And maybe, like, as we talked before, maybe he'll just become an oversized wide receiver with the tight end tag.
And what's wrong with that?
No, there's nothing wrong with that. That's basically what he's been anyway. So let's stop the pretense. So, and there's nothing wrong with having more receiving options, you know, for the offense. So
let's not make it sound like in the history of the last 30, 40 years while you're watching the NFL, there were guys that were just pass catchers, bro.
Correct.
And they were labeled tight ends and big freaking deal, man. But they were important to you. You know what I mean? They created mismatches for you. Mm-hmm. So that's why you use them all the way back from Brent Jones and all the way through now to Mike Gesicki. You'll find guys in the history of time that they weren't pancaking anybody on the line, but they were creating havoc all over the damn field.
Shannon Sharp. Shannon Sharp's another one.
Big arms and all. He wasn't there to block.
I don't recall him ever throwing the block. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, come on, man. I mean, Shannon Sharp was Sterling Sharp, except he played tight end. No big deal.
And you know what?
What was that?
And he talked to the media.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. I mean, there are guys that over the years you start to think about them, and they weren't really blockers for you, but they were creating all kinds of mismatches for you, and there's nothing wrong with that. And to kind of finish it up with this, I love the idea of tagging him and not extending him. Why? Because now I know what kind of offense you're going to run, right? So you know you got to experiment in a way with him. So there's no better way to experiment than a one-year tag. You're not tied to a long-term deal. It leaves it open for you to trade him. And at the same time, if he fits, then you can find the long-term deal after that. Correct. That's what I like about it, that at least you're able to control it for a year and then make the decision.
And at 11 mil, it's not outrageous.
Yeah.
So that, you know, that plays into that equation as well. So no, it certainly would make sense. If they do bring him back, though, I mean, something else going to have to give, whether they let go of Adam Shaheen, or maybe they decide Ethan Carter's value on special teams doesn't merit him, you know, remaining on the roster. But Hunter Long obviously is going to be on there. I still think they're going to re-sign Durham Smythe, especially if Gesicki stays, considering those two are really tight, even though certainly wouldn't be the determining factor from Smythe's standpoint. But again, he's another guy who was drafted by the Dolphins, and there is some merit to that certain guys like the idea of like staying with their original team, you know, as long as possible.
I'm with you there. All right. Follow him on Twitter, by the way, at Poupart NFL. What are you working on there at Sports Illustrated so fans can bookmark your page and lock it in, my friend?
Yeah, I'm going to do something like what we call in the journalism profession, cleaning out the Dolphin Combine notebook later today, some free agency thing as well, and then whatever else might pop up.
There you go. All right, good stuff. How was the garlic bread?
Oh, I meant to tell you that. Oh, better than I remembered. And I was with a big group, and I recommended it to everybody, and it was smashing. My God, it was ridiculous.
Right,
wow.
Of course. Right, of course.
Man, that was so good.
I miss it. Well, Sean and I will be there next year to accompany you and have some fun. I'm looking forward work in the combine again, bro. Haven't worked the streets and the bars in a while in Indy for last 3 years. This is my third straight one that I missed. Sucks.
Yeah.
Sucks big time. All right, my brother. Appreciate you as always. We'll catch you later in the week, and you'll have all of our defensive end information, free agency, and draft. You will be tested. Okay?
I'll be on it.
Much love. Later.
See you.
There you go. The great Alain Poupart, baby, in our Sports Grill. Miami Dolphins report.
This has been
This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.